Well, Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi have already held a bilateral meeting with the Indian Prime Minister saying he is committed to progressing ties with China. For some insight on their warming relations, we can speak to Eric Olander, co-founder of the China Global South Project. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Great to be here with you, Allison.
Can you just start by giving us your take on this rapprochement between India and China? To what extent do you think it's driven by Donald Trump?
I think it's been overstated a lot by the role that Donald Trump is playing in this. Let's not forget that this détente, or rapprochement, if you want to call it, has been underway for more than a year. Both countries started to realize that it was unsustainable for them to maintain such large troop presences on the border. And so this had been underway for a year. Certainly, Donald Trump is helping the situation, no doubt, because they both have shared interests. But let's not forget that the China-India relationship is a very complicated, multi-layered, multifaceted relationship that isn't going to be ironed out and smoothed out within months. It's going to take years to get them back to where they want to go. What they're trying to go for now is just a normal, functioning relationship, the reestablishment of air links, getting diplomats back in each other's countries, resuming trade ties normally. That's what they're really going for right now, and bringing the border situation to a manageable level.
Let's dive into that complex relationship a little bit, perhaps starting with the border situation between them. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and kind of why they're so at odds?
Sure. So it all started back in May of 2020 during what's called the Galwan Valley incident, when they really broke out into open clashes with sticks and stones and throwing at each other. And it was no firearms were used during that clash, but dozens of Indian soldiers were killed. And it really effectively put China-India relations into a deep freeze. At the same time, the Chinese have been renaming the borders and reissuing new maps that include large swaths of territory that the Indians claim is theirs. Again, those issues still have not been resolved in terms of where the actual border line is. What they seem to have resolved right now is that they can get to the point where they can communicate. And over the past 4 or 5 years since the Galwan Valley incident, again, you cannot overstate the deep freeze. Bear in mind that it was about 18 months ago that Xi and Modi were at a BRICS summit. They couldn't even look at each other. They barely could shake each other's hands. They had to be separated by other people in photo ops. So where we've come since that is quite impressive, but at the same time, there's still a lot of issues that need to be resolved. And don't forget, both leaders have very complex domestic constituencies that they have to deal with, who are not always aligned with where the political leaders are going. The military, traders, very large populations along these borders in those communities. So again, lots of complexity to this relationship that shouldn't be boiled down to just, okay, everything's done now, it's happy-go-lucky now.
Can you talk a bit about just briefly some of the other things separating them? I mean, there's China's closeness perhaps to India's rival Pakistan as well.
Well, you've got China's all-weather relationship with Pakistan is a major issue, especially in terms of military procurement. Pakistan sources about 82% of all of its military hardware, which performed very, very well in Operation Sindoor. We don't know how many planes. It's been a big subject of dispute that the Pakistanis shot down of the Indians. The Indians did acknowledge that some of the Rafales, the French-made planes, were shot down. And that has been a point of contestation. Also, you have the huge new dam that the Chinese are building. So water rights are going to be a very big issue. The Chinese are building a dam in Tibet. This has been a major concern for the Indians. Also, you have issues of trade. So there's large export restrictions there were at least up until recently, on urea, fertilizers, also rare earths. So easing that up. For the Chinese in India, the bigger issue is, will their executives be safe? The Indian tax authorities for quite some time were locking up executives and doing investigations into Xiaomi, Oppo, Vivo, Huawei. And so the Chinese are going to want to see a pullback of those enforcement regulations to the point where their nationals can be in there. And at the final point, I think, is this question of offshoring Chinese manufacturing to India. The Chinese have restricted the flow of expertise and equipment to India in a bid to try and slow some of that offshoring that's going on. You're going to want to see some of that ease up as well.
Given how complex the relationship is between the two countries, how long do you think this sort of newfound warmth we're seeing between them is going to last?
I think we're in a new era of international relations now, where again, as Jan mentioned, yeah, Donald Trump has upended a lot of the international order, and right now, India and China see their interests more aligned with one another than opposed to one another. Again, we need to be very, very cautious about reading too much into this. It's going to be a slow, grinding process of reconciliation. This will not happen fast. There's going to be setbacks. I think we have to anticipate that there are going to be misunderstandings. There's going to be issues that come up. Operation Sindoor, the conflict between India and Pakistan, was one of those that a lot of people thought could derail the rapprochement. It did not. And so that was an indication that, again, both sides, both Xi and Modi, see that their interests are more aligned together than apart right now. But that could change given the volatility that we're seeing in the international arena. Let's not forget that the Indians are also very nervous about China's encroachment into the Indian Ocean region. Also, there are issues that of the Chinese influence in places like Sri Lanka. These are all traditional spheres of influence that the Indians have felt are theirs. And so there is concern about this. So we have to keep our eye on those trends as well. But it is a complex process.
Do you think that the U.S. should be concerned about the closer ties we're starting to see between India and China?
I think the assessment from what I'm hearing from a lot of analysts in Washington and elsewhere is the U.S. just doesn't care right now. This is they are. I mean, when we talk about the U.S., we're talking about Donald Trump and an America First MAGA foreign policy. Their concerns are elsewhere. It is a transactional White House right now. The president clearly does not care about maintaining relations with India. When you hear the tone and the rhetoric that he's used, he doesn't seem to be perturbed by the fact that this is pushing India closer to China. At the same time, one of the things that we've noticed, and I've spoken to a number of analysts about this recently, is the fact that the China hawks are getting pushed aside in the White House. So the fact that India and China are getting closer together doesn't seem to be something of major concern in Washington right now. This is a new era, and in old Washington, this would have been unthinkable, especially now that Trump is not going to be attending the Quad summit, the gathering of Quad leaders, the security initiative that the United States launched in order to counter China in the Asia-Pacific region. So one has to wonder, will the Quad survive all of this? And it's anybody's guess right now. So it doesn't seem like this summit and the rapprochement between India and China is making big news in Washington. No one seems to really care that much, really. I mean, that's quite shocking and quite alarming given where we've been over the past 10 years.
What about the personal relationship between Modi and Xi? Do they tend to sort of get along well, see eye to eye?
Not, I mean, this has been a very tense relationship over the years. They're not friends by any measure. There's no indication that they have bonhomie. They're very professional and respectful of one another. But again, what we've seen over the past 5 years since the Galwan Valley incident has been just frigid, icy ties, and just the body language between those two at various summits that they've had and various gatherings has been very frigid. So it was very interesting today to watch the warm body language. And Xi is very interesting when he greets leaders that he likes. He has a more open language. He smiles a little bit more. And when he greets, and he has a firmer handshake, and he did that today. And that was something that was very interesting and notable, because if you look at the photos and the exchanges that they've had over the past 3 or 4 years, totally different body language. But I think the language that they use, this body language, is very much intended to be part of the optics of the relationship between the two. There you can see that by Xi Jinping standards, that is actually warm. He's not, he'll sometimes have very cold kind of ways of looking, and it'll be more kind of turned away. And so this is all intended to convey signals. And I think the signal is we're back to a working relationship. And that is something very important. And that is, compared to where we've been, really, really a major step forward.
And just briefly, we talked about the U.S., but what about Russia in all of this?
So Russia is the nexus between India and China when it comes to oil. The Indians feel very perturbed over the fact that the the United States has targeted them as being the facilitator of Russian oil in the Asia-Pacific region and then financing Russia's war in Ukraine. When in fact, S. Jaishankar, the external affairs minister, said, listen, the Chinese buy way more Russian oil than we do. And so, but yet they're getting a pass. And ironically, over the past 2 weeks, one of the things that we've seen is that as the Indians have dialed down their Russian oil purchases, the Chinese have stepped them up. It looks like right now that from the politics that India is not going to back away from Russian oil under pressure from the United States. So whatever the U.S. thought they were going to accomplish with this doesn't seem like it's going to be working. I mean, the politics for Modi is that he can't back down. There's no way. But they will probably start to dial down some of their oil purchases. But that was a process also that was underway before Trump already did this. But at the same time, Modi is going to make it very clear that he's not going to distance himself from Putin just because Trump wants him to. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. Russia and India have had a long-standing relationship dating all the way back into the Cold War and beyond. And so this is not going to change that. Again, it may even see the emergence again of this BRICS bloc and this SCO bloc that is starting to rival that of some of the Western-led coalitions.
All right, Eric, thank you so much for your analysis. We'll have to leave it there, but it's been a pleasure. Again, that's Eric Olander, co-founder of the China Global South Project.